Welcome back to our explainer on ISO/IEC 42001. So in part one, we basically mapped out the entire organizational context. But having a map is one thing. Deciding where you're actually going to go and how to handle the terrain, well, that's a whole other story. That's exactly where leadership and planning come in. They are the absolute crucial next steps for building an AI management system you can really trust.
Okay, so here's what we're going to tackle today. First up, we're breaking down leadership's core job, their mandate. Then, we'll look at the AI policy, which is really the cornerstone of this whole system. After that, it's all about assigning accountability, making sure people know who's responsible for what. From there, we'll pivot into the nuts and bolts of planning for success, and, probably most importantly, how to get ahead of those unique AI risks.
So we're kicking things off with Clause 5 of the standard. And trust me, it's no accident that leadership comes right after setting the context. The standard is making it incredibly clear. Effective, responsible AI governance doesn't just bubble up from the server room. No way. It has to be driven from the very top of the organization.
So let me just ask you this. Whose job is AI governance, really? Now, if your first thought is the IT department or maybe the data science team, that's a super common mistake. I mean, they're absolutely critical to the process, for sure, but ISO 42001 places the ultimate responsibility somewhere else entirely.
Just look at these verbs on the slide. Take, ensure, integrate. This is not a passive, hands-off role. Top management has to take accountability. Why? Because without their genuine buy-in, the whole system has no authority. It's dead on arrival. They have to ensure the policy exists to give everyone a clear North Star to follow. And they absolutely have to provide the resources, people, time, money, because let's be honest, a plan with no funding is just a wish. This is all about active, engaged leadership.
And that leads to maybe the most critical point of all. Your AI management system, or AIMS, just can't be some standalone thing. It's not a separate department you set up in a corner. The standard demands that its requirements are woven directly into the fabric of your organization's core business processes. So think of it less like a new piece of software you install and more like a whole new way of thinking that touches pretty much everything you do.
All right, so with leadership's commitment locked in, we can move on to the actual document that makes all that commitment tangible, the AI policy. This is covered in Clause 5.2. And this is where that high-level vision and all those good intentions get translated into formal, actionable rules for the entire company.
The standard actually defines a policy as the intentions and direction of an organization as formally expressed by its top management. Now, really pay attention to those key words, formally expressed. This isn't just a suggestion or a friendly guideline. This is the official stance of the organization, and it carries the full weight and authority of its leadership.
A good policy isn't just a fluffy mission statement. It has to be practical. It's got to be appropriate for what your organization actually does, right? And it needs to provide a clear framework so you can set real, measurable AI objectives. Crucially, it has to include a formal commitment to always get better and to meet all the relevant requirements. And here's the kicker. This can't be some secret document. It has to be written down, easy to find, and communicated so that everyone, and I mean everyone, understands the rules of the road.
Okay, you can see how this all builds, right? A brilliant policy is completely useless if no one's actually in charge of making it happen. That's where Clause 5.3 comes in. It requires top management to assign and communicate roles, responsibilities, and authorities. This, my friends, is where the rubber meets the road.
And this slide really highlights a key difference. Responsibility, that's the obligation to do a task. But authority, that's the power to make sure it actually gets done. And you need both. It's simple, really. You can make someone responsible for reporting on the AIMS, but if they don't have the authority to pull the data they need from other departments, you've just set them up to fail. The standard is smart. It requires you to define both, clearly.
So what does this actually look like? Well, an organization might give the CISO responsibility for the security of its AI models. The data protection officer would naturally own privacy compliance. Maybe an AI product manager gets tasked with reporting on the system's performance, while the legal team keeps an eye on the constantly changing regulatory world. The most important thing is that these roles and responsibilities are explicitly assigned, and everyone knows who owns what.
And with that, we are making a really critical pivot. We've covered all the high-level direction, the commitment, and the structure that's set by leadership in Clause 5. So now we're going to shift from all that direction straight into action.
This brings us right to Clause 6, planning.
This is where your organization looks back at that context we defined in Part 1, all those internal and external issues, and starts to build a proactive plan to manage the risks and, just as important, jump on the opportunities that come with your AI systems.
Now, the purpose of all this planning isn't just to create more paperwork. It has three very, very clear goals. First, to give you assurance and your customers and regulators that your AI systems will actually do what you say they're going to do. Second, to prevent or at least reduce any negative outcomes, which protects your reputation and your bottom line. And third, to build a cycle of continual improvement, making sure your AIMS evolves and just gets better and stronger over time.
Okay, so within this big bucket of planning, the single most critical activity is the formal process for dealing with risk. And this isn't about guesswork. It has to be a structured, repeatable method for assessing and treating the really unique risks that AI brings to the table. I mean, without this, you are literally flying blind.
The standard lays out a really clear three-step process for this. First, you identify any and all risks that could stop your AI systems from hitting their goals. Second, you analyze those risks. Think about what could happen and how likely it is to happen. And finally, you evaluate and prioritize them based on your own criteria, so you know exactly which fires you need to put out first.
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's one thing to identify all the risks, but just having a long list of problems doesn't really help anybody. The standard requires you to take that next most important step.
And that next step is called AI risk treatment. This is basically the process where you formally decide how you're going to respond to the risks you've prioritized. For every significant risk, you need a plan. This means selecting and implementing specific options or controls to get that risk down to a level you're comfortable with.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's the partnership between these two clauses. Leadership provides the vision, the resources, and that critical top-down commitment. But it's the meticulous, ground-up planning and risk management that builds the resilience you need to turn that vision into a trustworthy and effective reality. So the real question is your planning robust enough to support your vision?